Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love, a love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service.
Arise, O souls, all arise.
Good morning. I'm Don Dickey, a member of this church, and it is my privilege to welcome you here on this wonderful, wonderful Sunday. We live in exciting times, and given the events of the last week, it looks like for the second time in the history of our nation, we will have a woman candidate for the office of President of the United States. And also, for those of us not going to heaven, this next week should give us a preview of coming attractions. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Our tradition is a large tent. That said, we have room for many beliefs and approaches to questions that matter. Our values of inclusion, compassion, and justice are strong and hold us together. We seek to build the beloved community, making room for everyone and creating a world where everyone's needs are met. You may be new here this morning. Welcome. I hope that you have visited our welcome table in the lobby, where you can learn more about our congregation. Would all Souls members who want to meet visitors please raise your hand. And visitors, as you feel comfortable, I encourage you to talk with any of those people who have raised their hands. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you here today.
Let's take a deep breath. Feeling the air in its path into and out of our bodies. You are here right now. We are here together. I am the Reverend Erin Dajka Holley, the lead minister at All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. And I might ask us to breathe together more often, because the world seems to be spinning around us, a spiral of chaos and uncertainty, trying to knock us off kilter and sending us in all of the directions all at once. Maybe it's just me? I don't think so. So we're going to breathe, because our breath is constant. Our breath is happening right now. And that is all that needs to happen right now, because we're here in this moment together. And I share with you opening words by Pat Uribe Lichte. We gather. We bring our sorrows, our disappointments, our failures. We gather for healing, for laughter, and to rejoice. We gather to find new ways of loving, new ways of thinking, new ways of being. We gather. Yes, always we gather. For it is in gathering that we find our hope.
Here, today, in this place, with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way. Please stand as you are able and join in the affirmation of our covenant, then remain standing as we join together in song. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I would like to invite the young and the young at heart forward to sit in the front row or on the carpet. No pressure. Oh, we got one. Oh, Melody's going to join us too. All right, I'm going to stay standing for this one because I'm going to have to do some voices. Okay. This story is called The Great Pie Rat Controversy by Naomi King. The Reverend Naomi King is actually one of my colleagues. And once upon a time, there were these two pirates by the name of Calico Caesar and Barnacle Betty, and their parrots, Flag and Sail. Now, it was actually the parrots, which of course the pirates carried with them for good luck, who introduced these two pirates to one another. Because one day in Cayo Hueso, Key West, sitting on the beach, weaving raffia hats while waiting for another ship to come in and to try to sign on to the registry, Flag, the parrot, recognized Sail, the other parrot. And Flag flapped and said, "Sail, sail, ahoy! It is so good to see ya again, ya old salt." And Sail flogged in response, because every sailor knows flags flap, sails making the same movement, flog. "Why, Flag, my hearty, got a cracker for dear Polly?" "No, no," Flag said. "Squawk!" "That's enough of them bad manners, Flag," said Barnacle Betty. "Watch your tongue and be a good rogue. I do apologize, brother, for my parrot here." And Calico Caesar turned toward Barnacle Betty and laughed. "No worries, sister. My sweet Sail was seeking treasure that weren't hers." And all four of them, two pirates and two parrots, said at once, "Law of the sea, finders keepers, losers weepers," and burst out laughing. So Barnacle Betty and Calico Caesar got to jawing and weaving, and soon as you could say Pickled Pete poured out his boots of brine 10 times fast, they were known throughout the whole port to be thick as thieves, which is really saying something when you remember that this Cayo Hueso was full of pirates. And then one day, trouble struck. The thunder and lightning and capsizing winds of the BMO, the feared storm around Cuba's shores, had nothing on how the air sizzled and the features of these two pirates in North Havana turned ugly. All the other well-meaning pirates backed away until these two, with their parrots on their shoulders, turned in slow circles in the center of a big circle where the other pirates were busy taking bets and the other parrots stealing swills of the pirate grog as the fight escalated. "I'm telling you, chocolate be the best and true flavor of pie on the pirate ship," announced Barnacle Betty. And Flag bounced up and down on her shoulder. "Quack-quack, quack-quack, bonbons, candy, truffles, quack-quack, chip, chocolate." And Calico Caesar wiped his brow and shook his head. "No, no, Barnacle Betty, you are wrong. Strawberry is the best and true flavor of pie on a pirate ship." And Sail bounced up and down on his shoulder. "Very nice, very nice. Very bad and buried twice. Very nice." The other pirates elbowed each other, and they bellowed out hoots and laughter. "You tell 'em, Betty! Oh, you're both wrong. It's the pumpkin pie that's best." Or, "Gee, I could really use some pie right now." But Barnacle Betty stepped in very close to Calico Caesar and looked him dead in the eye. "You dare to call yourself a pirate? You know nothing about pie, the problem with strawberry, and the reason it never can be the true flavor of pie on a pirate ship is the crust. It gets all soggy. And whoever heard of a pirate pie that needed a bilge pump?" Sail bounced up and down on Calico Caesar's shoulder and shouted, much to his dismay, "A hit! Very palpable hit!" And Flag flew around both pirates, feeling victory under her wing. But Calico Caesar hadn't survived marooning and mutiny and serving under a Captain Sharp for nothing. He leaned closer to Barnacle Betty and growled, "You land-lubbin' pop-tart sneakin' fizzy-tizzy! You're mocking the name of pirate. You don't know the first thing about pie, let alone the kind of pie a true pirate seeks after weeks of nothing but salt beef and salt cod and salt mystery meat. A true pirate wants strawberry pie, and if that is not possible, a true pirate likes a bit of rhubarb strawberry pie with a flaky crust and steam just rising from the lattice work. Barnacle Betty nudged Calico Caesar and crowed with laughter. Show me proof of such pie. I can whip up chocolate pie in a pan off the mainmast and with your mama's approval. But I don't believe I have never seen, let alone smelled, tasted, or heard tale of such pastry of which you speak. All the other pirates gasped or laughed now. This fight was not a matter of taste, but of belief. And the accusation of a lie had whipped through the air, the cat out of the bag indeed. And you could smell the tension in the air like you can smell the ozone in the air just before a lightning strike. When all of a sudden, a funny creature wearing a rusty black coat and some worn socks and clutching a copy of Dread Pirate Robert's Rules of Order to her breast broke through the edge of the crowd. Wait, wait, my brother, my sister, she called in the querulous voice of the preaching pirate. My sister, my brother, we're all Jamaica disciples here, all signers of the great universal pirate code, all of us piratists. Aye, murmured the General Assembly around Calico Caesar and Barnacle Betty. Aye, squawked Sail, and eye for tooth for tooth, squawked Flag, until Sail gave him the evil parrot eye and sent him along with the rest. Aye, all of us piratists. What does the code say, sister? Said Barnacle Betty, never letting her eye off Calico Caesar. What does the code say, sister? Asked Calico Caesar, never letting his eye off Barnacle Betty. We turn, announced the preaching pirate, to the portion of the code that deals with whistles. And all the pirates all around got really quiet, because if there's something pirates have respect for, it is the pirate code. Elsewise, they wouldn't be called Jamaica disciples, where that code was first worked out and published. The quiet went on a long time as the preaching pirate turned page after page. Maybe it's here, she muttered, or where did that dog's body get to? And so on until she turned page after page, coming to the end of the book and shaking it. And then an idea hit her upside the head like an oar springing out of an iron-sick oarlock. She turned to page 1 of the code. The value justice, she intoned, observes what we do things not this way, but with democratic process. And what wins shall be how all follow, no matter how any voted. Election! Election! Intoned the parrots of every pirate, creating quite a cacophony. You have heard in favor of chocolate and in favor of strawberry already. Are there any other candidates to be named from the floor? And a whole host of pie-loving pirates lined up to speechify about their favorite flavors of pie. Tears were shed as tales of tender crust were told, and teeth gnashed about salt, mistakenly substituted for sugar, and broken custards and weevily pie. Finally, the time came for the voting. As the parrots chanted, "Very nice," and "chocolate," and a few mentioned pumpkin, and one parrot shouted, "quince." But he did always have to be different. The preaching pirate counted out the tallies and stepped into the center. My brothers and sisters, we are indeed pirate-easts, for we care very deeply about our pies. No offense intended to hand pies or shallow tarts, of course. We are universal pirate-easts, and the winner is. And then the preaching pirate looked around the circle. Actually, all of this practicing democracy has made me very hungry. Anyone else feeling a bit peckish? And the pirates all cheered aloud, "Ha-ha!" For many had discovered the rumbly-tumbly. And they left the field of battle, clapping each other on the back, trading pie recipes. Barnacle Betty clapped Calico Caesar on the back too, nearly knocking Sail off his shoulder in the process, and said, "Can we agree to disagree on the matter of pie, friend, and seek the happier subject of chowder?" Aye, Barnacle Betty, we can disagree in love for chowder's sake, if I can have your little packet of crackers at lunch. Fair enough, friend, she agreed, and they traded the secret chalice handshake of the Universal Pie Rat Easts and went to lunch. So just remember, all you pie rats, what your flavor of pie matters less than whether we make enough pie for everyone. And so, we sing you off for your schooling.
Go now in peace, may love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessings of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds. Faith to follow where the human spirit leads.
I haven't shared with you that I am the proprietor of a bar and grill. It's a seasonal business, and I have to say it's in full swing. Now, I operate the Hummingbird Bar and Grill out over the back deck of my house. Traffic is good, but by and large, the clientele are lousy tippers. And I have to confess, there's an effect, and that is sometimes I don't do the best job of keeping the bar and grill well supplied. And about 3 weeks ago, I was out having my morning coffee on the back deck, and I sat at one end of the deck, so there's a wall on my right. And around the corner comes a hummingbird. It sees me, it makes a sharp U-turn, and it hovers like less than 2 feet from my face. So I talk to the little guy, and then it flies and bashes itself into one of the hummingbird feeders that constitutes the Hummingbird Bar and Grill. My conclusion is that that little part of the interdependent web of all existence understood he was depending on the ape sitting over there sipping on coffee to keep the bar and grill well supplied. And I have to say, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event for me, and I'm a senior citizen. A little respect, please. So anyway, I come to you this morning as the offering bird. And now my story I am finishing. I'm going to tell you what needs replenishing, using a gesture and not a word, something I learned from a hummingbird. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me in the dedication of our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
This is from Fear by Leslie Alexander and Michelle Alexander in the 1619 Project. There's never been a time in the United States history when black rebellions did not spark existential fear among white people, often leading to violent response. Even when resistance has been peaceful or purely symbolic, such as black fists raised during the medal ceremony at the 1968 Olympics, or a knee taken on the football field during the national anthem nearly 50 years later. Any sign of rebellion has frequently resulted in threats or acts of violence perpetrated by white vigilantes, militia groups, and the police, often culminating in the creation or strengthening of systems of racial and social control. The reflexive impulse to respond to black people with severe punitiveness is traceable to the 18th and 19th centuries, when white people desperately sought to control a large, unfree population who refused to submit to their enslavement. The deep-seated, gnawing terror that black people might one day rise up and demand for themselves the same freedoms and inalienable rights that led white colonists to declare the American Revolution has shaped our nation's politics, culture, and systems of justice ever since. The specific forms of repression and control may have changed over time, but the underlying pattern established during slavery has remained the same. Modern-day policing, surveillance, and mass criminalization, as well as white vigilante violence, quote, know your place, unquote, aggression, have histories rooted in white fear, not merely of black crime or black people, but of black liberation. Nothing has proved more threatening to our democracy or more devastating to black communities than white fear of black freedom dreams.
The prayer ballot was written originally for the 2016 November election. Luke Stevens Royer is now the pastor of the Rochester, Minnesota Unitarian Universalist Church. This is what he wrote for 2016. Prayer ballot. I walk in as on pilgrimage. The altar cloths are red, white, and blue. The ushers are the women who have been running these things since before I was born. I'm handed the ballot like a scroll because the questions seem that important. Ancient and modern, of what my God and country ask of me. Who? Who for commissioner, mayor, president? Who for District 8, Ward 7, school board? Who? Who will do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly? I make my mark with at least a share of hope, a shred of hope that something good will come from this. And regardless, I remember the world won't be destroyed entirely by this. The world won't be saved entirely by this. Making my vote is like kneeling in prayer, because neither will accomplish anything right away. But the purpose of both is to remind me of my deepest hope for the world that I'm trying to help create. So I rise from prayer and turn in my ballot and remember the who is me and us and we the people. And again, I set to that task that is mine, justice, mercy, humble service in my small corner of the world.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me, sing to me quietly? Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me, stand by me willingly? Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me, comfort me tenderly? Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
I have two caveats before I actually begin. This is a politically based sermon. And before you become worried that I'm doing something that might compromise the church's tax-exempt status, the restriction is against supporting specific candidates or parties. So I can preach on issues until I turn blue. Also, my apologies to Kansas residents this morning, as I will be talking about an issue exclusive to the Missouri side. I'm going to tell everyone to vote on August 6th, and I mean you too. Every single legislative seat in Kansas is up for re-election. So something in state or local politics matters to you on the ballot too. And I want everyone to know that there's a fantastic voter guide that is assembled by several local news organizations, including KCUR and The Beacon, that I encourage you to utilize to find balanced, factual information about all of the issues and candidates on ballots in the greater Kansas City area. Okay. I really like order. Like alphabetical order. I was once a library page. An ordered space, items lined up just so, You know, there was a time that I felt compelled to alert a waitress about a lamp on the other side of the restaurant with the lampshade rather askew. It had been bothering me the entire meal. And the satisfaction of items on store shelves being stacked behind the right tags. Order, organization, so satisfying, so very satisfying. Now, yes, my preference for order is related to my neurotype, but I know that no matter what you try to say, some part of you truly appreciates when things are set just so or lined up perfectly, or even the act of clearing off your desk. Yes, that's better. And right now, I might suggest finding the little things that you can put into pleasing order and doing just that. Take 5 minutes to straighten up just a little bit. Make the bed, fold or hang up the laundry, clean out that junk drawer, or engage in some weeding. Yes, do something simple, something obvious, and set it to rights, just where it should be. Think of it as a spiritual practice, regularly doing something that increases order in your surroundings. Even if you're not like me, I think that doing this may give you a moment of peace. Because after doing this, you can take a deep breath while you appreciate what you have just done and spend a moment noticing what is happening inside of your body. How do you feel different than you did before? Can you breathe more deeply, your solar plexus loosening and your diaphragm dropping? Is your heart rate slower? Have your thoughts settled just a little bit? You are swimming in chaos and uncertainty, bombarded with information and requests from all the directions in the world, with so much happening all of the time in ways that you cannot expect, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. For me, it is as though my brain is spinning inside of my skull, faster and faster, without being able to connect to any one thing. What does it feel like for you? I'm not going to actually ask because I do not believe that a person can be alive and engaged in this world and not be experiencing at least some of this. While I can cognitively accept that chaos reigns in the systems that are the universe, and I know that the only power on which we can truly rely is change, while I know that hierarchy and a desire for order are by some people identified as elements of white supremacy culture. It's different from white supremacists. I'd be happy to explain the difference sometime. Now, while I know that I cannot and should not rely on order, I also know that it is calming and it feels good and that our brains like categories and parameters and, well, order. Because it feels good to have some semblance of control. I mean, really, that's what order is about, right? It's about having control. And I can, and I encourage you to find ways to feel a sense of control within ourselves. Because that's the only thing we can actually control. We can have specific intentions and follow through with them. We can do practices that slow us down, make us more aware of inside of us, and allow that inner knowledge to come out through our actions. We can, to at least a certain possible extent, because there's chocolate, but we can find self-control. And we can, to some extent, control our surroundings, especially if we have the privilege and the resources necessary to do so. I, however, draw the line at controlling others. And that's why my personal relationship with the practice of policing in America is complex. Because I understand the desire for order, and I balk at that becoming forceful order of other people. I remember Officer Friendly growing up, and I also remember protesting with Minneapolis Black Lives Matter several years ago when police officers in full riot gear with shields and 2.5-foot wooden sticks backed the group of protesters I was part of further and further back, practically pushing the group off the back end of the light rail platform. I feared for my safety, not from my fellow protesters, but from those sworn to serve and protect. That day, they served and protected everyone else, but not us. Would my clergy collar offer me any protection should the desire for control push things towards violence? That was where I was in that moment, and there was no violence that day. However, that fear remains with me, and it likely forever will. So I don't usually trust political calls for law and order, because those calls for order are calls for control. And I have been stunned to observe all the layers of control that have forever surrounded the Kansas City Police Department. So you're going to get a history lesson today. Whee! The state of Missouri controls the Kansas City Police Department through the State Police Commission because of white supremacy. It started with St. Louis just before the Civil War as part of a larger plot to steal the St. Louis Armory and its 40,000 weapons for the Confederacy. This is called the Camp Jackson Affair, and it did fail. And then in 1874, during Reconstruction after the war, the state control that was already on the books was extended to the new Kansas City Police Department as a way to curb the power of the growing Black community. If the Black community, as Black men were suddenly allowed to vote, were to elect their own leaders to run the police department, the police could not be used to control them and maintain the order of white supremacy. And there were notable incidents in the 19th century of political corruption on the part of the Democrats, that was at the time the party that supported slavery and continued to further white supremacy, to keep the Republicans off of the police force. The state control law was eventually found unconstitutional in 1932, and it was struck down. There was local control for 7 years, because the state was able to use the corruption connected to crime boss Tom Pendergast to pass another law and reinstate control over the Kansas City Police Department. Yes, it was effective at solving that specific corruption, but state control has not prevented further corruption and misdeeds in the 85 years that have followed. So all of this is background to right now, when we will once again vote on August 6th on Amendment 4, which increases the state-demanded minimum percentage of the Kansas City budget that must be allocated to the state-controlled police department from 20% to 25%. A state constitutional amendment about the Kansas City budget? Why does this need a constitutional amendment? Well, first, let me be clear that there is nothing currently in the Missouri Constitution about the state control of the Kansas City Police Department. All of the laws that set up state control again in 1939, as well as the laws in the 1950s that set the 20% minimum budget, were simply passed by the legislature. The problem is that the legislature passed an increase to 25% in 2022, but the 1980 Hancock Amendment to the state constitution bars the legislature from unfunded mandates upon other governmental entities. So this is so important to the state legislatures and governor that they are getting around a constitutional amendment by proposing another very specific constitutional amendment. Now, that amendment did pass statewide, not in Kansas City, in 2022. It had a misleading sentence that said that there would be no increase in expenses for anyone due to the measure, which was incorrect. The demand upon Kansas City was nearly $38 million above the previous law's demand, even though Kansas City has regularly budgeted more than the minimum 20%. And there was a lawsuit, and that caused the state Supreme Court to call the amendment invalid, and it suggested clarifying the language and having another vote. So here we are. The Secretary of the state of Missouri, the entirety of the state of Missouri, who bothers to vote in a primary election that has no bearing on national politics, is deciding, again, how much money Kansas City must allocate the police department that it does not control. And the history of all of this does not surprise me. And I am willing to state that to this day, I believe the continued focus of the state on controlling Kansas City's police department is still about white supremacy. The State Police Commission has not addressed the statistics that Black people are arrested and suffer police violence at much higher rates than white people. According to the Kansas City Defender, 70% of the jail population is Black. 70%. As residents of Kansas City, we cannot demand through our elected officials that the police department be run differently. State control. The system was set up this way. It is not an accident. Our elected officials of our city council have listened to residents and are trying something with funding that isn't related to the police department. For this year's new budget, they have allocated $1.26 million for a new program called REACH, Responding with Empathetic Alternatives and Community Health. Now, once this gets off the ground, because we just started a new fiscal year, if there's an issue of difficulties that do not require the police, such as a mental health incident, trespassing due to homelessness or substance abuse, Kansas City residents will be able to call 311 instead of 911 to dispatch responders who are EMTs, mental health professionals, and social workers to de-escalate and help meet the person's actual needs. And let's be honest, they do not need to be arrested or to go to jail, which is often what happens when police are involved. They need access to the right resources, and this program will provide that. The whole thing is going to be run by the health department, and care provided will come at no cost. So we have an alternative to policing, an alternative to arrest and jail, an alternative that is not about control, but about connecting through human care. And this reflects our Unitarian Universalist values. The value of justice and its paired covenant statement. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large. So when we state that we, as Unitarian Universalists and as members of All Souls, covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression, we promise to not turn away from the realities. We promise to see that history shows us as the inherently racist premise of policing here in Kansas City. And we promise to do something about it. And in a week and a half, residents of Missouri can use the democratic process to push back against the state control of Kansas City's police department. We can vote to reject the silly constitutional amendment that is nothing more than state overreach for control. We can vote. We can tell our neighbors to vote. We can explain that this whole state control thing has no reason to exist in the 21st century. Get out the word that this otherwise seemingly insignificant primary is important. And know also that there are currently 2 lawsuits filed. One by the Metro Organization for Racial and Economic Equality, More Squared, of which we are a founding member, and the other by 3 local residents. The son of one of them was killed by a KCPD officer in 2013. And each case is coming at the 1939 law from a different angle, but they exist explicitly to try to end state control of our police department. So you can support More Squared, or even get involved more in More Squared, and its myriad efforts throughout the region to end oppression and further equity. Yes, it feels as though the world is spinning out of control. Yes, everything is coming at us, the fastest speed, everything demanding our attention, and many of the issues we face so large and complicated, and it feels like fighting an uphill battle. Yes, we're tired. Yes, we're overwhelmed. And yes, it feels like we have no control, but we can control our own breathing and bring ourselves back into our bodies, feeling the ground beneath us. We can take small efforts to feel control over our own space, to create just a little bit more order in our lives, and we can claim the power of the ballot box on August 6th. We can see this single issue and how it is tied up in larger issues and put that bit of energy into pushing back against those who seek to control us and our community without our permission. We are not powerless in this political climate. The hope is there for building the beloved community of which we dream. Don't give in to the overwhelm. Get fired up. Show up. Cast your vote on August 6th, and may each vote we make contribute to a swell of demand for justice and equity. May we remember that it matters, that small actions contribute to change, and that we never, ever lose hope. May it be so. Please stand as you are willing and able to sing our next hymn, When the Spirit Says Do.
You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do. Oh yeah, you've got to do when the Spirit says do. You You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing. Oh yeah, you got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout. Oh yeah, you got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to vote when the Spirit says vote. You got to vote when the Spirit says vote. When the Spirit says vote, you got to vote. Oh yeah, you got to vote when the Spirit says vote. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh yeah, you got to do when the Spirit says do.
We release this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. One small thing. You don't need more than one small thing. A breath, a moment of peace inside the chaos, and the knowledge that each of us doing one small thing creates a better world for everyone. Do that one thing in the days ahead, for yourself, for the community, for the world.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh yeah, you got to do when the Spirit says do.